Alrighty, we are live. Welcome in everybody to another weekly episode here on Celtics Digest. We're your hosts Bruce Veliz and Patrick Billings, and in today's weekly live stream, we have some news to talk about with the Boston Celtics. If people have been having some different opinions within this Celtics team, and in previous streams, Patrick and I have dived in and looked where the Celtics are going to place within this team. But in today's episode, we're going to be talking about that main focal point, that number one option, that main guy for the Boston Celtics this year in Jaylen Brown. As an article that was released talked about how they don't feel confident that Jaylen Brown is going to be able to take that leap as that number one guy. And I think truly this is going to define everything for the season, because if he does take that leap, we could see the Celtics be a little bit better, in a better spot than we've seen in the past. If he doesn't, well, we could see the Celtics maybe being a little bit worse out of that play-in, not hitting those expectations. And we could see a little bit of some drastic changes potentially coming into that season. So here to break it down all with me today is Patrick. Patrick, how you doing, my guy?
Doing good, man. A little tired. I think we both are. You know what? We're crawling again, Bruce. Another week of. We got some news at least. We got some news with the confirmation of Bill Chisholm finally taking over, but Wyc Grousbeck is still going to be sticking around, which I'm sure a lot of people will be happy about. But got a little article here on Jaylen Brown, and good to get diving in on some of this, because I think it should be talked about for sure.
100%. And specifically with Jaylen Brown, like you kind of mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, like he is the main talking point for the Boston Celtics, and in a spot where, like we just talked about, it's been kind of dry. We got some news with the Bill Chisholm buying, but besides that, there hasn't been any concrete moves for the Boston Celtics. We did see them, go out and bring Ron Harper Jr. back and stuff like that. But the Celtics haven't made any trades since the Georges Niang one, haven't done anything crazy since Chris Boucher, and that's stuff that we just obviously have previously talked about. So in today's episode, we're going to dive in and talk about Jaylen Brown. And there was an article that was released by Sports Illustrated, Patrick, and in this article here, they discussed a lot about the Boston Celtics and Jaylen Brown. Now, we're going to dive in and talk about all of that. What is your kind of first interpretations of this article, as they don't seem to be that high on Jaylen Brown going into this season?
It's kind of funny because we always heard the dynamic of it being Jaylen, like from a lot of people, honestly, saying that Jaylen Brown was the better player than Jayson Tatum. But now that Jayson Tatum's not going to be playing, assumptionally, like not playing the whole season, now it seems like the narrative has totally flipped, and Jaylen Brown's not capable of being that number one guy on a contending team. And I think that's totally false. I think he's shown in many times that he's able to step up when he needs to. We saw him win Finals MVP. I mean, even though Jayson Tatum led in the major stats, but he was there to step up in a lot of those major games where they needed him. And we've seen him play really, really well consistently with Jayson Tatum out. So I don't really understand what their narrative is with this, that he can't do it, but he's never had the chance to do it, especially for this long. So I think this is a great opportunity for him, but a lot of teams are definitely going to be looking for him in a lot of their game plans to try and stop him, maybe force him left, but that never really stops him anyways. But I'm kind of excited to see him be that number one guy for this team.
Yeah, I'm very excited to see Jaylen Brown kind of take this leap. I know a lot of people have been discussing the Jaylen Brown number one kind of option, and maybe not being the fondest fans of it, maybe even tying with his contract, his age with this team, and how, the CBA really structures how you can really build your rosters. But I do think that a lot of people are discounting Jaylen Brown. When Jayson Tatum went sideline in Game 5, a lot of people were willing to just chalk up that series, and lo and behold, the Celtics were able to win the next game due to the fact of guys like Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard, Derrick White stepping up and delivering. And the Celtics team is still going to be effective. We saw last year through the playoffs, like we mentioned, Jaylen Brown winning Finals MVP, winning Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Even though Jayson Tatum was there and they had to game plan against both of them, Jaylen Brown rose to that occasion when Jayson Tatum was struggling from shooting and went out to dominate, was an effective player. And we've seen the Boston Celtics have games throughout these past couple seasons where they play through Jaylen Brown and they find success. And I think that's what we're going to see this season, with them maybe even teetering how they play with this lineup. But Bob Ryan and Jeff Goodman were on the CLNS Media over on YouTube about their podcast, and they had a little bit of a discussion with this. And Jeff Goodman was the one that was not the biggest fan of Jaylen Brown really stepping up. Patrick having this quote where he says, "I have long said I don't think Jaylen Brown is the number one guy or can be the number one guy for a really good team, for a contending team. and he said to tell me I'm wrong. Well, Patrick, you kind of just went into a little bit why he was wrong right there, but do you got anything else further to say about that?
Yeah, I looked up the stats of Jaylen Brown without Jayson Tatum. So in 39 games without Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown has averaged 27.3 points with 7.1 rebounds and 3.9 assists. And that's all without Jayson Tatum. If he puts together a full season of that, assuming that the assists will be a little bit higher, honestly, with the pieces he has around him, I think he's able to do that. I think his rebounding would also go up because he'll take that Jayson Tatum role where we saw this a lot with Luke Cornett with how good of this is how it kind of ties in a little bit because he didn't like to get the defensive rebounds because he'd rather those guys kind of grab it and get up the court. And I think he's going to get a lot more rebounds because of that too. And Jayson Tatum was that main focal point in doing that. But I think that Jaylen Brown could easily put up these stats all season long and have an all-NBA year, no question.
Yeah.
Hopefully no injuries. But I think with the guys that he does surround himself with, I mean, you know, Anthony Simons, if he is around, he's a great three-point shooter. That'll bring a lot more assists in for him. Derrick White becoming one of the best spot-up three-point shooters in the league. I think he's got the pieces to do it. Neemias Queta, lob threat as well. And if he's going to be attacking the paint, being more aggressive, I think having those options as well is going to open up more for his offense. And I think that he's going to fit really well in this number one role. And I really don't see why they're questioning it, especially with those stats.
No, I completely agree. And I like how you brought up the rebounds and the assists because those are two key things that we're going to have to watch out for the Boston Celtics this year. The rebounds, obviously, how you mentioned without Jayson Tatum, they're going to rely on that, need someone to help initiate their offense. But also with the assists, we've seen Jaylen Brown's assist numbers go up even over the course of his career, even dating to last year where he was very more effective as a passer within this unit, playing more as a connective guy. And we've seen with Jayson Tatum, right? He's kind of that point forward, kind of runs the offense, commands the offense, does a lot, initiates a lot of actions and stuff like that, sets up plays. And we could see that coming in with Jaylen Brown kind of into this season with Jayson Tatum being out. And when that kind of comes into play, like you mentioned, those assist numbers go up, those numbers go up, him helping out on the ball and just being just a help with everybody else just makes it a lot better. And then you add on the fact guys like Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Anthony Simons, all these good three-point shooters out on the wing alongside a guy in Jaylen Brown who's a very solid three-point shooter who has been disrespected in games where teams think he's the weakest, but ultimately isn't virtually the best for the Boston Celtics out there on the court. I truly do think this will help him and the Celtics play that game of attacking the rim and trying to kick out to the three-point line where they'll have those guys to help not only hit them some threes, but give Jaylen Brown some assists too.
Yeah, and I think a big opportunity for him too, I think this year you might be able to agree with this, is being that four, honestly. I could see him running some four this year in a small lineup and having Boucher running the five. So you have like an Anthony Simons with Derrick White, Peyton Pritchard, Jaylen Brown, or have Sam Hauser kind of in the mix with that small lineup, but have Boucher at the five. And we can kind of see him even run that Tatum style even more. But I think that he'll be a little bit more of like a corner specialist as well, kind of be sitting in that corner and kind of give him a player or two off because he did shoot a three-point well from the corner. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think last year he shot it exceptionally well. But I think that there's a lot of opportunity to mix around his offense a little bit more because he kind of seemed a little bit one-dimensional at times. You kind of know that he's going to attack at one side of the rim. He's going to pull up to the elbow, and then he's going to have maybe a couple of spot-up threes if he gets a little bit of ISO, but he's done a little bit better with that, as we've seen with him and Tatum, honestly, with kind of getting away from the isolation plays and really just being more of a team player. And I think that we're going to see a lot smarter Jaylen Brown this year, honestly, and I think that's going to benefit him a lot.
Yeah, we've talked about him playing the power forward a lot. I know me and you have mentioned it. I think it was a little bit before the Chris Boucher signing, kind of figuring out if he'd kind of fit there a little bit more in a starting lineup. I thought it would have looked a little bit better. Now with Boucher here, maybe not as much transitioning him to the three, but I like how you mentioned that, specifically with the uncertainty of guys like maybe Jordan Walsh or Josh Minot or can Hugo Gonzalez really step up as these key defensive or, wing pieces for this team. If none of those really can step up, maybe they do have to dip into Jaylen Brown playing some more of that power forward position, and I think that would be very intriguing to see. I think we'll see him playing some more of that compared to the two guard, just because they are a little bit more stacked to that guard rotation and up in there. But Patrick, Bob Ryan does agree, saying that he is a little bit skeptical that Brown can rise to those Tatum-esque levels of greatness. He has a limited handle, which could get exposed with rival teams, specifically on game planning to stop him. It says, I can't. I like him. He's fine. He's a wonderful player, but I agree. There's a level of hierarchy in all sports. He's at the next level, the very good level, but he's not at that level, I don't think. And this season, there's just a chance to prove everybody wrong. That's no problem, but I think they're going to be in that lucky 7 to 8 seed mix. That's somewhere where we thought they were going to be falling in, which is okay, but the one thing that really sticks out to me from this quote here, and maybe this is just my analyzation of basketball, but I agree there's a hierarchy of level of sports. He's at the next level, the very good level, but he's not at that level, I don't think. Is that level that we're talking about only for 3 or 4 guys and it just changes every single year? Because that's what it basically seems like. What level are we talking about?
Right.
Jaylen Brown is a 4-time NBA All-Star, an NBA champion, MVP, and Eastern Conference Finals MVP. I understand he's, the 1B to Jayson Tatum's 1A. But like we've described here on this podcast, even earlier, there's times where Jaylen Brown can take over, be that number one option in those big moments, and deliver not only on the offensive side, but on the defensive end as well. So I think this is really, really peculiar. I think that a lot of people have these fascinations of putting these guys in groups and stuff like that based on plays. And because Jaylen Brown maybe hasn't gotten all that recognition like we've talked about, of him being that number one option in that space, maybe people are a little bit skeptical to it. But I would argue that Jaylen Brown could be better than some of these number one options already on these NBA teams. So I don't understand where you can kind of say he's not at that level.
Yeah, and I think that the reason why they're saying that is just because of some weaknesses in his game, because of what's just talked about most about him. They don't really talk about how great he is at a bunch of things. They talk about what he's bad at. And I think that they talk about his no left hand, which we've seen him get to his left hand. Maybe his handle isn't the best, but he doesn't need his handle to be the best because he has guys like Peyton Pritchard, who has one of the best because it's constantly on a rope. You don't see him lose the ball. We've seen all the workouts. And he's got other ball handlers around him, so that's just not his job. So I think that, like he says, that this year he has, reason to prove people wrong, which I totally agree with. That one I definitely agree. There's so much opportunity right in front of him. But there's things that he still doesn't have to do because that's not in his role. If he's going to dribble, he's really going to be in an ISO situation looking for a step back 3, or he's kind of just going to go forward, either take it to the rack or take that one dribble pull up at the elbow. That's just what he does. Everybody has their own moves. He doesn't need to have this tight Kyrie handle to be in the upper echelon. That's not what's going to put you up there. I think that everything that he has shown is right in front of you, and it's just kind of hate at that point. But I think the one thing that stands out for me, Bruce, is with him being in this role, a bigger role, I mean, assuming he'll play, some more minutes than usual, I think you would just have to assume, even though he does play a lot, will it affect him defensively now that he's the true number one option? And that's the one thing you got to think about too. But I think that he's going to have the same intensity, but is he going to have a little bit of a drop off, or is he going to lock in even more because of this opportunity?
I like that point that you just proved right there, because I think that's more of a glaring issue than what maybe is being presented here in this article or being even talked about with Jaylen Brown, because I haven't even really thought about that, whereas he's going to be that number one commanding guy on offense. We obviously know Jayson Tatum usually runs that offense. That's where Jaylen Brown can play a little bit more defense. But now Jaylen Brown obviously got to focus on both sides of the ball. Then you add to the factor that they lose Jrue Holiday, who was a great defensive piece. They lose Luke Cornett, who was pretty solid. They lose Al Horford. They lost Kristaps Porziņģis. They lost other key pieces that were part of this team. So not only does Jaylen Brown have to step up extra efficiently on the offensive side, but also has to do it on the defensive end. I think we will see Jaylen Brown, personally, in my opinion, I think focus more on that defensive end for the Boston Celtics. I do think they have those offensive players in that personnel, like a Peyton Pritchard, who can be very, not that he's not great on the defensive end, but more viable on that offensive end. Obviously, Derrick White, a little bit more of an in-betweener. The guys like Sam Hauser, Baylor Shyman, who can light up on that offensive end, I think they're going to be that more focus and shining light of trying to, and Anthony Simons as well, if he's still in Boston, to make those impacts on the offensive end if Jaylen Brown is struggling in a little bit of a rut or has to put all of his money onto the defensive end to maybe lock someone down so that they can get a win.
Yeah, and that's what I totally agree on too, because it's not like he's not surrounded by guys that can't do anything offensively. Like, he has a lot of guys around him that are extremely talented shooting the ball. Like you said, Pritchard, Simons. I mean, even coming off the bench with Shireman as well. Hopefully Jordan Walsh will kind of pick up some things. But I think guys like Hugo Gonzalez can also kind of bring something into this offense as well, as being more commanding with running the offense, which when we were watching him, that's something I totally saw, that he seems like such a veteran presence already with handling the ball and being able to set up the offense, which is something that Jaylen Brown hasn't done so much. So I don't know if that's going to change either. Is he like Jayson Tatum is? Like, he's bringing up the ball, he's kind of setting up the offense a bit, but are we going to see that more from Jaylen Brown, or does that fall into the hands of the other guards?
That is true, and where that I think when you look at Jaylen Brown and kind of comparing him to those kind of other guards and playing that system, I think what we were talking about earlier, him playing the power forward is only not going to allow them to focus more on that offensive with the guards, but also allow him to not have that playmaking, not have that decision making like you were referring to earlier as well, which is going to maybe stray away those comments of no left hand, no dribbling, no focusing on that. I think he's going to be that defensive stopper for this Boston Celtics team, and they also have those guys like we mentioned, the Josh Minot, the Jordan Walsh, the Hugo Gonzalez potential to be those defensive stoppers for this Celtics team here on this second unit, and I think we could see the shine of light there. I just feel a little bit more confident with the offensive production, obviously, than the defensive production, so I'd rather have JB playing that defense. And then Patrick, lastly, when referring and talking about this situation as well, we have one final quote here, and it is from Jeff Goodman, and this quote is referring to the Celtics in response to Bob Ryan when talking about where they're going to kind of finish into that seed. And he says Goodman concurred that Boston would be hard-pressed to finish better than 7 next spring. They're going to be I think they're going to be fortunate to avoid the play-in. I really do. And again, you go back. Jaylen Brown, if he's the number one guy, with Jayson Tatum and with Derrick White, you'd say, okay, maybe if he's the focal point. He wasn't the focal point in the NBA Finals. Everybody will push back and say he won Finals MVP. He did, but not at that guy. Not as the guy that you're game planning around. Not now that he will be the number one option on the scouting report. I feel like people will obviously have a little bit more to pressure on him. I hate to say it. It's Jaylen Brown and Derrick White, nobody else right now. And Derrick White is not Jayson Tatum. Very confusing with the wording there. Sorry if I did butcher it, because we were both confused reading the quote, because it's just, snippets here, back and forth, just cutting pieces out, basically. So not really getting a full sentiment, but they're going to avoid the future of the play-in, but Jaylen Brown's not that number one guy, so how does that make sense? I don't really know, but Patrick, we kind of discuss it, 7 to 8 seed, where we think the Boston Celtics are really going to finish around. Has that kind of changed the sentiment over these last couple of weeks, or do you still feel confident that they're going to be around that 6 to 8 mark that we kind of displayed earlier?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty set on the 6 to 8 mark, just because of all the questions that are still to be answered around this offseason and even going into the middle of the season. Also, depending on the start of how everything goes. Maybe if things aren't going so well, maybe they're making a lot more moves than we expect, or if they're kind of just doing a lot better. I mean, we really have so much questions with this lineup, with all these new guys coming in, with the center position. What's that going to look like with Nemi and Garza? What is Minot going to be doing in this lineup, and what do the rookies have to show? I mean, there's just so many questions, honestly. But I think one thing that I forgot to bring up, I'm going to bring up quick, too, circling back about Jaylen Brown on defense. Him and Tatum have said that they want to make all defensive teams.
Yes.
That when I talk about intensity, I think that we're still going to get that from him. But, when you get a bigger offensive load, sometimes it's harder to pick up the same load defensively. So that's kind of what I was getting at. But again, I do think that 6 to 8 range is definitely respectable, because I think that the East has some pretty good teams. I'm high on the Hawks myself. We look at the Cavs, the Magic. I think the Knicks bringing everybody back definitely helps them with some help off the bench. And the Sixers, you think if they get healthy and they stay healthy, they're going to be pretty scary as well. So that's already 5 teams that you could put above the Celtics, and maybe they squeeze into that 6th spot, but I definitely don't see them missing the playoffs, honestly.
Yeah, I don't see them missing the playoffs, and even if they do miss the playoffs, they'll be in that play-in, and I don't see, Joe Mazzulla really shying out if they're in that 7-8 matchup. I feel confident them going into that one-game kind of win scenario where we've seen them in the past. If not, though, then they have that second chance. I don't see them falling into that 9-10, so I don't think they'll be put into that dire need position to win. But yeah, I would completely agree. I think around 7 to 8 kind of makes sense. It's kind of sad, but also ironic that both teams that were in the Eastern Conference Finals last year both have their stars now out with the same injury. So it's like the Celtics and the Pacers kind of have like the same blueprint. It's not like one team is stuck, both teams are kind of stuck, which stinks, but I guess benefits the Celtics a little bit just because maybe they'll just be in a better spot. One of those teams that was slated to be better than them might not be, or might be around that same area, which could help them out. But ultimately, they were trying to, get a top pick like AJ DeBansta or, one of these new players coming in the draft, then this would not be the case. Do you think that's something that could still happen, Patrick? I see your eyes moving.
Hey, I'm allowed to be, a little delusional. If things aren't starting off well, first couple of months, deadline's kind of coming down to it. I mean, they're not looking good if they're at the bottom of the East, then might as well try something different. Can bring the hometown kid back, maybe some Cameron Boozer as well.
Yes.
People talking about him like a Paolo and Franz Wagner type of mix. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some options coming in this next draft, which I'm definitely excited about. But do I think that the Celtics are looking that way? No, I don't think that they're looking that way until Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are no longer on the Celtics. So I think we got a long time to start talking about that.
I would 100% agree with that. You know how I've been sticking with this entire offseason. I was turning off those Shams notifications and getting pressed by seeing those Jaylen Brown and Derrick White trades. So
hates us.
And all those trade rumors. Yeah, and there was still talk about the Celtics like a couple weeks ago from all those. Why? There's no need. There's no need. They're not doing anything. There was talk about the sale from Shams Charania. Oh no! Wick is still there. It is A-okay. Yeah. And we talked about that in yesterday's video too.
I think everyone wants to see the Celtics fail, realistically. I mean, it's kind of like watching the Chiefs. You don't want to see them win. I didn't want to see, I'm not a Patriots fan. A lot of people watching this probably are, but no one wants to see the same team win a billion times unless it's your own team.
Yep.
Probably why they're. But we only got one within this time span, but they know that there's more coming down the line. So.
Mm-hmm. Nah, I understand that. And I mean, speaking of, being a Patriots fan, now that I'm on the other side of the spectrum, it is not fun. I will let you know that. Trust me, I have been bashing on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs over these last couple of years because I just can't deal with it. I told my college friends, I understand why you hate the Patriots. I understand. Even if you're from New York, and that's the main reason, I still understand why you dislike the Patriots. But Patrick, referring to the Boston Celtics, diving back into them just lastly here before we do sign off on this week's episode. Anything else you want to really mainly take away from this team, from this article, just anything you want to kind of get into?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's refreshing to kind of talk about something like Jaylen Brown. I don't think we've been able to talk about him really all off season other than these stupid trade talks that people are putting up, honestly. So it's good to kind of talk good about him and really talk about what the Celtics are kind of going to go about next season and how he's going to play. And I'm honestly just excited. I really hope that he could get his second All-NBA team. I high hopes for him. Hopefully he gets second team again. But yeah, I mean, I'm just curious to just see how he does with the bigger load offensively and keeping up with it defensively. And I think that can change everything for the Celtics. Is just really on how he plays and, of course, of how Derrick White plays. He's always going to be solid. But, yeah, I'm just ready for the season to start just to have these questions be answered, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of the worst parts about the offseason is having all these questions and just everything's just like piling in the back of your head. Last year, it was the Kristaps Porziņģis injury. Will he be 100% for the regular season? Most likely not. Who's going to be the starting center? How will the center rotation now look without Kristaps Porziņģis? Will the Celtics still be as dominant with Porziņģis dealing with those injuries, etc. and etc. Now, obviously, it's a little bit of a different notion this year as they still are without Porziņģis to start this season, but he is no longer in green. There are multiple other players that have now left this roster, and it is a little bit of a reshape, specifically with Jayson Tatum as well being injured. I think if Tatum was here, maybe it'll be a little bit more all in, maybe not as much movement with these kind of big time contracts, or we'd see some different trades for some of these contracts, but unfortunately, this is the situation the Celtics are in. It is Jaylen Brown and Derrick White looking to take that command as those number 1 and number 2 guys for this Boston Celtics team. I'm excited to break it down, to get into it, and I can't wait for the season to start any sooner. We were talking about preseason just the other day. It's just nowhere near around the corner, and we're just begging for it at basically every hour at this point.
I've never said, when does preseason start? to be like this is how much I'm waiting for the Celtics to play basketball. Is that I'm asking about preseason.
And
Unbelievable.
and it sucks too because we were stripped of our finals basketball that we were supposed to watch too. So it's just we lost the basketball early, we lost our superstar early, and now the long-awaited wait is still here for the Celtics. But I want to say thank you to everyone that tuned out to the stream today. Patrick and I broke down the latest revolving around the Boston Celtics, and I think this is going to be where I say this here, where it's going to be the last time I think Patrick and I will be doing a live stream together. So I do appreciate Patrick for being here. Patrick and I will still be doing videos for these next couple of weeks, but I will be leaving Digest Media at the start of September. So for you guys here that have been paying attention to Celtics Digest or Suns Digest, this will be these last couple of streams and videos kind of to end the month. But with me going, that doesn't mean that the content's going to stop or anything bad is going to be coming on these channels, because I know my guy Patrick is going to be grinding here for you guys, getting videos throughout the whole entire season with these live streams, doing all this great stuff. We're going to have more creators coming on, helping him out, and I know he's going to do a fantastic job with doing that. So Patrick, these streams, we've been doing them for a couple months with you just joining on, but they've been absolutely fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better duo host on this Digest channel, so thank you so much, man.
Dude, I appreciate you always, man. I mean, it's never the end, of course. Bruce is definitely going to hop on some streams in the future for sure. I'm going to make sure he's not that busy. I mean, he's got some big things coming, man, and there's a lot of opportunities in front of him that he's got to take on. And he was here for pretty much the start of Celtics Digest, man. And this is the face that you guys have seen for years, if you guys have been watching for that long. And he's done a great job. He's helped me out, man. And it's been an awesome time, bro. It's been really, really, really fun, bro. And I'm excited to see what's coming for yourself. I mean, you guys got to make sure you're watching out for Bruce and seeing what he's doing to keep up on him, because I know you guys are fans of him.
I appreciate the kind words as always, Patrick. Always the same to you in that mutual respect. And I know, like you said, I've been to the start of the beginning here. We've gotten to, 7,000 subscribers here together. And I only know you're going to see that skyrocket and rise, get into that 10 and 15,000 and hopefully even 100,000 goals that we could see here for the channel in these next couple years. You never know. One video could take you from 50K to 100K just like that. And I have a feeling that this could be the channel to do so, just because it is the Boston Celtics. But thank you guys so much for tuning in, hanging out here, being with us. I will be here next weekend by myself doing the final live stream with me, and then we'll have these videos coming out for you guys. But I wanted to give you that a little bit of a heads up, just in case you just saw me disappear off the face of the earth and had no idea where I went. That is what is going to be happening. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in, hanging out here with Patrick and I on this live stream here on Celtics Digest. But we'll catch you guys in the next one, and have a great rest